Our top story this morning, Joe Biden has kicked off his first overseas tour as U.S. president. He arrived in Cornwall with First Lady Dr. Jill Biden ahead of the G-7 summit. Now, the 8-day mission aims to rebuild the U.S.'s ties with its European allies, which had become strained during the Trump presidency. The U.S. also aims to reassess its relations with Russia. Even before he arrived in Europe, Biden's national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, announced a major vaccine sharing initiative. U.S. Armed Forces personnel stationed at the British Royal Air Force Base welcomed the Bidens. Biden addressed the U.S. troops. He called them diplomats and bridge builders of the so-called special partnership between the two countries.
Bonds of history and shared sacrifice run deep and are strong, based on values, and they endure. The connections and camaraderie between our troops, this community of American citizens stationed in the UK, U.S. visiting forces and families, 20,000 strong, are not only warriors, you're diplomats and you're bridge builders. You are the essential part of what makes up this special relationship between Great Britain and the United States.
Biden has a long list of presidents and prime ministers to meet. There are several potential areas of tension which are likely to take the center stage. For instance, climate change, an issue where U.S. aims to regain credibility. Trade and vaccine equity will also be discussed. Biden is all set to reassert the U.S. interest on the global stage, especially after his predecessor, Donald Trump, left the European allies completely shaken by trade tariffs and pulling out of international treaties. Biden will attend two important meetings at the NATO and the European Union before he heads to Geneva for a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. And U.S. and Russia share strained relations due to a number of issues like cyber attacks, election interference, and Moscow's aggression against Ukraine. And for more on this, we are now being joined by WION correspondent Kate Fisher from Washington, D.C. Kate, thank you for joining us. Could you just walk us through the key areas of discussions and negotiations during this trip?
Well, it's a big moment for President Joe Biden, his first overseas trip, and he is billing it with a huge amount of significance, talking about this is him bringing the message to the rest of the world that democracy will win out over autocracy. He wants to show Europe and the rest of the world that America is back. He needs to show them that the 4 years of the Donald Trump presidency, during which America turned its back on most of its allies, tried to withdraw from international organizations, didn't help out allies, criticized NATO, and so on. Joe Biden has a tough job to persuade all those bruised allies who are worried about what Donald Trump was doing that America is back and is not about to change course once again. It's kind of perhaps shocked those countries about how easily America's usual steadfastness can change under a change of election. Also, the kind of biggest diplomatic moment in this trip is that summit with Vladimir Putin. Right. It's really the biggest moment of Joe Biden's foreign policy career.
Right, Kate. I was in fact going to come to that. Of course, the world will be very closely monitoring this trip, and especially, like you mentioned, his first summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, what do you think we can expect on that front?
Well, Vladimir Putin sent a strong message to Joe Biden in Moscow yesterday. He a court in Moscow essentially deemed the groups associated with Alexei Navalny, his main political opposition there, as extremist organisations, which mean that they can be pursued and arrested, and they can no longer stand for parliamentary positions. It's a big move to show Joe Biden essentially that Russia will not be kind of pushed around, sending a message that they will deal with their own affairs ahead of that meeting. Joe Biden has said that he wants to raise Alexei Navalny, the treatment of Putin's political opponent. He also wants to raise the issue of ransomware attacks that have happened to several large US companies. Although he doesn't blame Vladimir Putin specifically, he believes that they do originate in Russia, and also the election interference that has happened, that the US intelligence agencies have put at Russia's door. So there's plenty on the agenda for that meeting.
Right, Kate. Of course, it's going to be 8 days of diplomacy, like we said. Thank you so much for joining us with all the details. We will definitely be tracking all the developments here. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.